Hello everybody and welcome to the ultimate Dreamcast GDEMU tutorial. I'm so excited to be recording this video and also to be releasing along with it my brand new version of openMenu and the gdMenu card manager to accommodate it. This is a huge release in my opinion. I'm so excited and happy that I was able to get these features completed, and I'm even more excited to share it all with the community and to see what everybody does with it, and frankly to see how much they enjoy it and love it, which I hope they do. Hope you do. Now, the main thing that this release and this modified version of the menu software aimed to tackle was virtual folders, virtual subfolders too, right? So going as high as 8 levels deep when it comes to the the folder tree structure there. This is something, in my opinion, that it's always been a feature gap when you compare gdEMU to the other optical drive emulators for the console, like the Mode or USB GD-ROM, or even using Dreamshell with the IDE mod. Now, gdEMU is my preferred ODE solution simply because, and for no other reason, it's just rock solid in terms of compatibility. There's nothing you're going to throw at it that's not going to work perfectly. That being said, when openMenu kind of was passed the torch from the legacy gdMenu, it did help with the user experience, right? There was also new card management software from Sonic with a K, that same software that I forked that we're going to be looking at today for my new version of openMenu, right? So a lot of things got better. You could kind of, organize your games with like numbered, number and A through Z folders with openMenu. You could sort by genre, but yeah, I don't know. All of that is really lacking to me. Great steps forward, don't get me wrong, right? It's on the shoulders of giants that I stand today before you, but I thought virtual subfolders, the ability to really organize your list of disk images with total flexibility, just like you would on any other flash cart or optical drive emulator that supports a regular file system, drag and drop operations. That's really what I wanted to bring to openMenu. Now, everybody watching this, I'd say you should look down in the video description for all of the timestamped links, the chapters as it were, because we're going to start breaking this down in 3 sections at the beginning for 3 different types of users. First, those who are brand new to gdEMU, right, setting all this up for the first time. After that will be brand new openMenu users, right, people who are converting from gdMenu. And then the last section, which is probably most relevant to people, is what all of you existing openMenu users should do to migrate to this new version. And then after that, we'll kind of merge together and explore the new version of openMenu, the card manager software a little more, things like that. So, like I said, check that video description for those chapter links, and let's get started. All right, so starting with folks who are brand new to gdEMU and setting one up for the first time. Quite simply, you're going to want to head over to the GitHub repository, link provided in the video description, and navigate on over to Releases. You're going to want to grab the latest release here for your particular platform, whether that be Linux, OS X, or Mac OS, and 2 different flavors of Windows build, 64-bit and 32-bit. After you download that, you'll go ahead and extract it, and you'll be presented with an application folder. So this will look a bit different on Mac and Linux, but if you're a Mac or Linux user, extremely simple to find the executable and launch it. You'll have no problems. So I'll go ahead and start the card manager. And this is a fresh SD card, nothing on here, no games, nothing. And as soon as we open it, we'll see that the SD card drive letter is going to be automatically selected based on a particular SD card that I may already have inserted into the computer. And of course we could compare to make sure that's the correct card, which we should, right? And there'd be a drop down here. We're also going to have 2 radio buttons here to select between gdMenu and openMenu. And of course we're going to want to use openMenu. Off the bat, we may or may not have an entry number 1 here. It doesn't matter if you see this or if you do. If you do or don't, doesn't matter. But we're going to start adding some games. So I'll move this over a bit, and I've got some GDIs and CDIs here I'm going to go ahead and add. How about we'll do Super Puzzle Fighter 2X, my English patch, just drag it on over. And how about We'll do good old Death Crimson 2. How about that? And for some CDIs, some homebrew and some indie, how about Postal? How about Intrepid Izzy? Okay, so now coming back over to the card manager software, we can see we have the ability to customize the titles for these. They're automatically pulled from the header and the disk image, the ip.bin headers, present on all of these, all of these disk images. But we can customize these, right? So we'll say here, Super Puzzle Fighter 2X for matching service, and this is the English translation, so we'll just give it a TN tag there. Death Crimson 2, Altar of Melanito. Let's customize this too. And these don't need any customization. They pulled the correct title from the header. And you'll notice here this serial column, and these serial numbers are going to be used, these IDs are going to be used to kind of correlate metadata and artwork displayed in the menu to a particular game or a particular disk image. In a little while, I'm going to point everyone in the direction of where they can go to see a tutorial on setting up artwork and such. But for now, just wanted to call that out. We've also got our disk column here, which is customizable. We'll look at that in a little more detail later in the video. And we've got our type column here where we have game or other. Again, we'll look at that a little bit later, but essentially it's so that we can add non-game disk images to our card and still have them processed correctly and also have them treated correctly by openMenu. If for some reason you drag something on and it gets labeled as other erroneously, just select it as game. That had to do with parsing the CDI headers, or excuse me, the headers inside of that disk image. Can happen sometimes on some indie titles. But let's go ahead and save changes here. And we'll wait for this to finish. I'll pause the video recording and come back as soon as it's done. Okay, and we are now done. We'll go ahead and close the card manager, eject our SD card, and we will boot it up on hardware to see what we get. Okay, booting up our SD card that we just authored. Very basic with just a handful of games there. And you will not see this view by default in openMenu. In fact, you'll see this. Let's go ahead and into the settings and show you. Oops. I'm sorry. You will see this. There we go. And we can see that we do have artwork there for Death Crimson 2, Super Puzzle Fighter 2X, but not for Postal or Intrepid Izzy. Well, that's no problem. We can easily go ahead and address any of our games that do not have artwork matching. I am going to turn off the console, share the screen again, and show you exactly what video to reference, a video of mine, and exactly at which timestamp you should go in order to see that tutorial on customizing and adding any type of missing artwork. Okay, now that we've done that quick hardware test, what you're going to want to do is head on over to YouTube. You can go to my channel or just search for some part of this video title. You're going to want to skip to the 6-minute and 45-second mark. This video will walk you through everything you need to add artwork missing for any titles, assuming you care about that kind of thing. So we can see here, there's going to be a link to a separate utility. I'll put this in the main video description as well. And you'll be able to modify artwork and game IDs in any way that you need. And that wraps it up for those who are brand new to GDEMU and just need to get started with adding their games to openMenu and, of course, adding any type of missing artwork. Okay, so this section is for those who are going to be using openMenu from the first time, or for the first time rather, and who currently have a gdMenu configuration set up on their SD card. You're going to want to head to the GitHub repository, link in the video description, navigate to releases, and download the latest release for your operating system, whether that be Linux, Mac OS, or the 64-bit or 32-bit version of the Windows builds. And after you download these, you will go ahead and extract the package, and depending on the operating system, Windows, Linux, or Mac, the file explorer will look different. The folders will look a bit different, but you get the picture. Launch the executable. So inserted into my computer right now is a gdMenu formatted SD card with just a few different games here, right? Nothing too crazy, pretty simple collection. So all we need to do to perform this conversion is navigate up here to the top right where these radio buttons exist for gdMenu and openMenu. We simply select openMenu, and we want to make sure that under the type column, anything that is truly a game is marked as a game. If you're using the old gdMenu with the old SD card maker tool from Madcheap, you actually would have had the ability to put non-game disk images on there. If you've been maintaining a gdMenu SD card with this more modern card manager, not my modified A-Team version, but the regular one, you wouldn't even have the ability to put non-game disk images on there. But that being said, the detection mechanism that takes place to denote type here sometimes misfires on some indie and homebrew stuff. So just take a quick look under the type column, make sure anything that is a game is labeled as such. Select openMenu, like I said. We won't worry about any of these things for now, but just know that serial is something of a game ID that you can use to uniquely tie an individual disk image or game to metadata or artwork. We'll look at that in a minute. And there's also the disk number field, which is customizable, but we'll look at that later as well. So all we need to do is save changes here, and it will replace gdMenu with our brand new version of openMenu and write it back out to the card, and it only takes a moment. And just like that, it is done. Now we're going to close this out, eject the SD card, and we will fire it up on real hardware. Alright, so our console is booting here. The SD card is in the gdEMU, and we're going to take a look at what we get after this simple first-time conversion. So we will see the default theme here with just our 4 disk images, and as we'll notice, Postal and Intrepid Izzy, neither one have artwork, but we're okay here for Death Crimson 2 and Super Puzzle Fighter 2X for matching service. Now this is the default theme here in openMenu. Later in this video we're going to be looking at the reason you're all here, which is the brand new version of openMenu, the new theming engine, and the new virtual folder support, which I'll say again, super excited about. But what you're going to want to do here is start taking notes of games that have missing artwork. We're going to switch back over to sharing out the computer screen in a moment, and I'm going to point you towards another video tutorial of mine that shows you how to do all of the artwork management so that you will be able to apply artwork to all of these individual games or disk images if you should so desire. Right? Some users don't care, but if you do, the option is certainly there. So let's switch back over to the computer. All right, back over on the computer. You can say at this point you've noted down all the games missing artwork. What you're going to want to do, head on over to YouTube, either go to my channel or just search for some part of this title here, and then skip to the 6-minute and 45-second mark. Alright, so we've powered up. Let me turn the sound off there. Not always thrilled to hear my own voice. But this part of the video tutorial will walk you through all of the steps needed to add all of that missing artwork with a dedicated tool you can see right there. I'll pause that. So once you've completed that step, look down in the video description again, the main video here, for the chapter, the chapter marks, the chapter links, and all 3 sections are going to get merged down so I can show you all about how to use the brand new version of openMenu, the new virtual folders theme, and yeah, give you the entire tour. Skip on down. All right, in this section we're going to be looking at what existing openMenu users should be doing to migrate to my new version of openMenu. And it's very, very simple. It's an all-in-one package here. So head on over to the GitHub repository, linked in the video description, navigate to Releases, and download the appropriate build for your operating system. You've got Linux, Mac OS, and both 64 and 32-bit versions of the Windows package. And once you download and extract that, depending on your operating system, right, you'll have some type of file explorer, and the executable, will be there. It'll look different than this depending on your OS, but we're in Windows here, obviously. Now, there's a couple optional things you may want to do depending on how you were using openMenu. You may have been, amassing and customizing your own artwork for a long time now. You may even have a custom cheat save file, right, for Codebreaker. All you're going to need to do is go to your original gdMenu Card Manager application folder, go to Tools, openMenu, Menu Data, and you're going to want to copy Box, Icon, and Meta. These 3 DAT files all contain your metadata and artwork. So if you have these and you want to use them rather than the one that I baked in, which isn't necessarily complete or anything, it has all sorts of custom IDs for different pieces of homebrew and indie, go ahead and copy these from your original folder. In the new A-Team version, go to that same path and just paste them in. I'm obviously not going to do that. And if you have a cheats database, you can go into that cheats folder in your original card, and you can copy that there as well, fcdcheats.bin, and it resides right here. I will say that I am using the latest and most up-to-date version of the Codebreaker cheats database, but if you made any changes to it yourself, all you have to do is overwrite it there, and it's as simple as that. Now the next step, very easy. Head on into the Card Manager folder, the root folder there, open up the executable, and you'll notice things look a little different than they used to. There's now a folder column. There's the ability to edit the entries in the disk column. There's also a type column. If for any reason any of your games are accidentally labeled as type other, if the auto detection failed on some piece of indie or homebrew, all you need to do is come to this drop down and select game. We'll look at this in a little bit in the upcoming section. This is a new feature so that you can add non-game disk images to your card, things like audio CDs or VCDs if you have VCD software, or karaoke VCDs if you're using the Karaoke Rebirth, the Dreamcast Rebirth edition, things like that. But yeah, go ahead and make sure everything that's a game has the game label of type, and then all you really need to do is click Save. We're not going to touch folders or anything like that for now. We're going to look at that in the next section, but by clicking Save here, you will overwrite the older version of openMenu on your card with the brand new version. And we'll just boot this up on the console just to take a quick look so that you can see that the upgrade was successful. There's a very obvious change in the settings menu that'll make it abundantly clear. So let's go ahead, close this, eject the SD card, and boot it up on the Dreamcast. Okay, booting up the console here. The SD card is inserted into the GDEMU. When openMenu launches, we'll see our very basic sample collection of 4 games there. And like I said, in order to see that the upgrade in fact was successful and took place, just open up the settings menu, and you will now see on the bottom your gdEMU firmware, build, and the openMenu build. I'm not going to look at anything else here yet, like the really cool folder style, what we're all here for, right? How to set up these virtual subfolders. But just want to show you, right, the openMenu update, or upgrade as it were, was successful, and we are now using the latest version. So use those chapter links in the video description and skip on down to the next section so we can review all of the cool stuff in this new version of openMenu. Okay, we're back over on the computer, and no matter how you've gotten here, whether you're a first-time gdEMU user, somebody converting from gdMenu to openMenu, or you're an existing openMenu user updating to this new version, here we are. So we will launch the Card Manager software. Here's our humble little collection of disk images. Now let's take a look at a few things. New to this version are the folder column and the type column. I covered in the previous sections that type is there so we can now add non-game disk images. things like audio CDs, VCDs, if you have the appropriate player software and such. And the disk number column is now modifiable, and that'll be relevant in a moment. Let's click the preload button down here, and this will actually read all of the available metadata from the card and populate it. So there's our disk numbers, there's our types, and there's our IDs. I'll make this a bit bigger so we can see better. Now you also may notice that the maximum number of characters for a disk image title has been expanded. It is now 256 characters, but be careful because the total path for folders is also 256 characters. So you're never really going to hit any of this, but if you can go, you can go 8 levels deep in terms of nested subfolders, but that entire path better not exceed 256 characters, but it's basically impossible unless you're literally just trying to break things. It's a very, very big buffer you've got there. So we've got a few things labeled: Super Puzzle Fighter 2X for matching service, Death Crimson 2, Altar of Melanito, Postal, and Intrepid Izzy. So in order to fix my own missing artwork, I have a couple custom IDs for Intrepid Izzy and for Postal. I'm going to paste them in right here. And that way when we go and test this in a little bit, those two will have the appropriate artwork. But let's start putting these into different folders. So how about we'll put this in here under translations and hacks. Oops. We'll copy that. We'll do the same here. Actually, let's do some nested subfolders. So all we have to do for nested is just use backslashes like this. And we can go, as I said, 8 levels deep. So here we'll go games, indie, and homebrew. We'll do the same thing for Intrepid Izzy. Now, in a moment, well, not a moment, but shortly, when we go switch over to the console, we'll be able to see those nested in there. And as I said before, we have the ability to add things that aren't game disk images. So let's look at a VCD. Now, I've got here Dream Movie. This is a piece of software, Chinese device, unauthorized, unlicensed. It has an IR receiver dongle that is kind of a bit of a DRM situation where if the receiver dongle isn't present, the software doesn't work. Trying to reverse engineer and patch that out to use a regular controller is a conversation for another day. It's eluded me for many years. But this could be any number of use cases. MP3 player software with an MP3 disc, the Dreamcast Rebirth Edition disc with karaoke VCDs, whatever the case may be, something that isn't a game disc, or just audio CDs, right? Let's say you just want to have audio CDs on here that when you launch, when you launch them from openMenu, it'll boot you back to the CD player. But let's look at this version here where we're going to actually queue up like a boot disk. That's going to require us to then cycle to the next disk in order to actually play it, right? So if it was MP3 player software, well, your first disk has to be the MP3 software. Your second disk would have to be the disk containing the MP3s. In this case, the first disk is going to be the Dream Movie software, and the second one is going to be the VCD itself, which I've got here converted into a compatible format, which is CCD image sub. It could also be CDI or MDF, MDS, whatever. So I'll drag that on over as well. Now, coming into the game list, very importantly, we need to make sure for these arbitrary multi-disc collections that they share the same serial and that the disc numbers are sequential and make sense, and also they must be sequential on the SD card itself, right? So we can see here, this is folder 1, and then 2, 3, 4, 5. This must reside in these two must reside in sequential folders. That way, when you go to press the disk swap button on the GDEMU itself, it'll cycle from that boot disk to the actual disk containing the content that you care to look at. Just keep in mind, there really is no need to alphanumerically sort any of this except for your own kind of organizational purposes. Once you actually load this up in openMenu, it's automatically alphanumerically sorted. So, is a bit of a limitation with just the GDEMU itself that if you do want to cycle to the next disk image, they have to be sequential on the card. But that's what we're going to be looking at here today. What we really care about, though, is this, right? This is the name of the VCD. So we're going to give the VCD player software the same name. And let's throw these into multimedia video CD. Let's give them the same ID. How about VCD Virtual Fighter 2? Right, so now openMenu is going to say, oh, these two are part of the same ID, and they are part of a multi-disc set when we modify the disc numbers just like this, 1 of 2 and 2 of 2. You'll see here that the VCD player software got accurately ID'd as a game, whereas Virtua Fighter VCD itself is labeled as other, and that's perfectly okay and that's appropriate. That's exactly what we would expect. Now let's look at also adding, how about an audio CD? So let me open that up here. We've got a few different video game soundtracks. Let's do, how about Police Knots, of course. We'll go ahead and drag our, oops, not our cue, drag our CCD in. It's actually going to get the correct title because I happen to have these in a folder with a name text file that has that title, so that's nice. We don't have to worry about changing the title. And we'll put this into multimedia, and let's show an example of a really long folder name so you can see how the scroll feature works. See, there was an old limitation for 39 characters for disk image names, which was very silly. So as I said, it's been increased to 256. Inside of the menu, you'll actually see a really cool marquee effect, the speed setting for which is customizable by the user. That way, not only are long names supported, but you can actually see them all. Let's do something kind of funny with this. We'll do multimedia. This is my really, really long subfolder name for demo purposes. And then inside of here, we'll have audio CD. This got appropriately labeled here as type other. A serial really isn't important, and ID is not important unless you'd like to set up artwork for your non-game stuff, right? So for example, this Virtua Fighter VCD, you might want to, have the cover for that VCD show up when you, navigate through the menu for this. Same thing with the Police Knots soundtrack here. But all of that is totally optional. Everything looks good. This is essentially totally ready for mastering to the SD card. So let's go ahead and click Save Changes, and we will let it do its thing. We'll pause the video and come back once it's complete. All right, the card manager software has finished writing out to the SD card. We can close this. We'll go ahead and eject the card, and then we will boot it up in the Dreamcast itself. See what we've got, and I'll give you all a tour of the new version of openMenu. Oh, baby. Okay, we are back on the Dreamcast for our final part of the video here, showing it all coming together and giving you the tour through the new version of openMenu, its settings, and how to use it. So we can ignore what we're seeing on the screen now, but let's open up our settings menu. And there's a new entry added after scroll called Folders. Now, the default baked-in theme that I built and designed is called Folders Default. There's another one called Folder Alt that is just kind of, I don't know, an afterthought. But Folders Default was really what I had in mind. And of course, if you check the GitHub repository README and the documentation, all the definitions for the new theming engine are there. And I suspect that RazorX will eventually implement support for this theme format in his kind of all-in-one GDEMU package and theme manager. But once we've selected Folders Default, we can pretty much leave everything else alone. Most of these settings are ignored in the Folders View mode, but we'll set Multi-Disk to hide, and then we'll click Apply. And boom, here we are. So as we can see, inside of Games, we've got two subfolders, as we defined earlier, inside of the Card Manager, Indie and Homebrew. And there's Intrepid Izzy, and there's Postal. Just like before, we can launch these games with cheats. If we press B, we'll get that option to run Codebreaker with the up-to-date cheat database that I mentioned. If we're using VMU Pro, VM2, USB for Maple, and we hit Y to exit to BIOS, it'll automatically tell each of those devices, hey, this is the game ID I'm working on here, and it'll automatically switch to that virtual VMU That's not something I added. That was something openMenu's had for a while, thanks to Megavolt 85. And that way, you could then put in an OEM VMU in the second socket of your controller and copy files from an original VMU directly to that game's virtual VMU. If you're not using VM2 or VMU Pro or USB for Maple, Exit to BIOS will still work. It just doesn't do anything fancy. It just brings you back to the BIOS. So let's go up a couple directories here, go to translations and hacks, and well, there they are. Super Puzzle Fighter 2X. Oh, and we can see that marquee effect kind of coming into place there for that longer game name. Let's head back up to the parent directory and go into multimedia. Hey, remember that super ridiculously long subfolder name just for demo purposes? Well, there it is. And we can see it marqueeing cleanly inside of the brackets. Very nice. And if we head in here, we'll have that audio CD subfolder. And if we go ahead and actually launch this, it will take us back to the Dreamcast BIOS, and then you can go to the music player and actually play that CD. If we go into video CD, this is where that Virtua Fighter 2 VCD is. And if I try to launch it, because I have multi-disc set to hide, a setting you should definitely have on, I'll get the option here to launch any number of the disc images associated with it. Now you might remember, disc 1 is the actual VCD software, disc 2 is the VCD itself. So I would want to launch disc 1, and I'll show you that working in just a moment. But let me close this out and open up the settings menu with X. So settings menu here, pretty basic. You've got your style for different themes you might be interested in. And you've also got the 3D BIOS on and off thing that SBS TNC added. That means that when you exit to BIOS, you'll either get the normal stock looking BIOS or you'll get the quote-unquote 3D BIOS. I prefer the original, nostalgia purposes and all, so I always like to leave that to off. Multi-disc is set to hide, which it should, so that way multi-disc games don't consume more than one entry in the list, and when you go to launch one, it'll ask you, hey, which disc number do you want? Artwork is set to on. If you don't care about artwork at all, you can turn this off and no artwork will show up. If you leave it on, then if there is art, you'll get it. If not, you'll get that kind of default background image you see at the bottom right there of just the empty disc. And you've also got this marquee speed. So you can actually, if I close out the menu here, if I open up settings, this by default is set to medium, but if I set it to, let's say, fast, we can see that it's moving a bit faster now. If we set that to slow, nice and slow, in case your eyes can't keep up, right? So let's go ahead, like I said, and actually launch that VCD using this multi-disc trick here that you can now achieve with this modified version. So it'll do the full boot sequence cycle here. Let me try to skip it. We even get a fun Englishy message here about not having the receiver dongle and stuff won't work, like I mentioned before. And here we are inside of Super Dream Player, no disk or error. So like I said, in such cases where you have some type of boot disk, an MP3 player software, VCD software, the karaoke software, all you have to do at this stage is press the disk swap button on the GDEMU itself. So let me do that now. And there we go. It recognized the next disk on the card, and I can navigate down and let's just play one of these. Virtua Fighter 2, the ultimate fighting game. Oh yeah. Oh, excuse me, the ultimate 3D fighting game. Very important distinction. So yeah, that does it, everybody. This is our tutorial today on the new version of openMenu, how to get things going, whether you were brand new to GDEMU, or whether you were a gdMenu user or an existing openMenu user. All three paths bringing you to the same beautiful, happy destination. And I hope everyone is very excited with this release, and if they all find it very useful. Looking forward to feedback. I'm here kind of as much as I can, vowing to maintain and actively update and fix this new fork, this new version of openMenu and the card manager, because well, I'm pretty heavily involved in this scene, and I just love this stuff, and I love giving back, and I want to make sure that we've got, a really, really great solution here for navigating through our game collections and all of that and organizing them. Thank you all so much for watching. Have a wonderful day, and stay tuned for more.